Okay, so if you're alive on Earth today, it's very clear that our planet is becoming progressively more and more divided. You got the whole liberal versus conservative thing. You got the whole feminists versus men thing. BLM versus police. Guys, this thing has been really hitting me hard as of late because I'm seeing that even in my own personal life, relationships are just falling apart. Have you noticed that right when you fix one relationship, another relationship starts to just crumble? And there's a reason for this. And we're going to go over that in today's study because we're looking at Satan's number one objective. Like, what is Satan's main goal when it comes to distracting us and overcoming us? What is his main goal? I was talking to a friend today, and we were talking about the fact that in the world, we're just seeing stuff fall apart relationally in a very dark way. Something about how 2020 went has pushed people to this place of just, man, I don't know what's going on, man, but actually I do know what's going on. It's just fascinating to see it happen this quickly. So let's just jump in here. Isaiah 14 verse 14 says, this is Satan talking. He says, I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High, talking about the Most High God. So Satan actually was kicked out of heaven because he wanted to take the place of God. Now, God is obviously the ruler of all creation. So if Satan wanted to take God's place, it means he's saying that he has a better way than God has. He has a different law, a different way of doing things than what God has. So Satan's goal would be to supplant God's ideas with his ideas, to replace God's law, the Ten Commandments, with his law, to replace God's law of love with his selfish way of doing things. So since this is the case, let's take a look at God's law to see exactly what is it that Satan is trying to do here. In Matthew 22:36, someone asked Jesus, what is the greatest law? Which is the great commandment in the law? Verse 37 says, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. Matthew 22:38 says, This is the first and great commandment. So he says, love the Lord with all your soul, with all your heart, and with all your mind. That's the first and great commandment. Verse 39, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And then verse 30 lets us know that on these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets. So the 10 commandments and everything concerning love is summed up into these commandments of love God and love your neighbor. So if Satan is trying to supplant God's law, it means that what he's really trying to do is attack our relationships with God and our relationships with each other. Because that's what the 10 commandments is about. So if Satan has a problem with God's 10 commandments, he has to have a problem with relationships based on love. Because love is the summary of God's commandments. Love God, love your neighbor. This is the reason why we're seeing this rapid declension in relationships in the world. And I know it's not just me. If you're a human being, you know that when you fix one relationship, somehow another relationship starts to go south. Relationships require the most work out of anything that we have to do here on earth. And if you don't have good relationships, you really don't have a good life. I mean, think about a life of just bad relationships. What if everywhere you went, everyone just hated you? Your wife hated you. Your brother hated you. Your sister hated you. No one wanted to actually interact with you. How horrible would that be? I can make the argument that relationships are the most important thing in this life because life is nothing without relationships. Imagine if you had all the money in the world, all the cars in the world, everything in the world, you owned the world, but there was no one here to share it with. What would be the point of anything? We get quarantined for, a certain amount of time and we're depressed because we need interaction with each other. In the beginning, when God created Adam, the Bible lets us know that at a certain point, God saw that Adam was alone and he said, it's not good that man should be alone. So he created a helpmeet for Adam because it's not good for humans to be alone. And so this is why I believe that we're seeing this crazy attack, this declension in relationships, this declension in love in relationships, this demonizing of each other that's going on in the world right now. I'm convinced that this is the greatest crisis that is currently taking place on this planet. It's not global warming. It's not the fact that Biden is the president and Trump is no longer the president. It's not the fact that BLM is going against the police and the police is killing black people. That's not our greatest crisis. No, it's not racism. Nope, that's not our greatest crisis. Our greatest crisis is the decline in relationships in general. The division that is purposefully being placed between us by Satan. Satan is manipulating the world into hating each other because the world doesn't even believe that Satan exists. I posted a 1-minute video on this yesterday. The fact is that the best way to conquer any group of people as a warrior, if you're in a war and you want to go against a group of people, your enemies, well, the best way to conquer them is in fact to convince them that you don't exist. Because then you can do stuff like turn them against themselves, which is exactly what Satan has done with human beings. Man, let's get back to what I'm saying here. Satan wanted to take God's place. He wanted to be like the Most High God. So it only makes sense that he would have to replace God's law with his law. God's law is the law of love. Love God, love your neighbor. So if Satan wants to take the place of that law, he has to replace love with the opposite, which Satan represents, which is hate, destruction, chaos, all the stuff that gets between our loving relationships. Matthew 24 verse 12 says, because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. As wickedness increases, people stop trusting each other. I mean, guys, there's just something so fishy about 2020. I made a video about how, I watch conspiracy theories and all this stuff, and I don't think a lot of them are actually conspiracies. And God showed me that you don't want to get too involved with conspiracy theories because in the end, no one can conspire against those who follow God. But there's something so strange about the year 2020 and what's going on even right now. Guys, I feel like there's actually people being used by Satan who are actually working towards dividing not just America, but the entire world, and making it so that even our interpersonal relationships are being challenged by separating us. And as the world deteriorates, as the world becomes more wicked, there was a time when you could actually pick up a person who was on the side of the street. If they asked you for a ride, you can actually pick them up. Now, it's actually not smart to do that because wickedness will abound. The love of many will wax cold. It's just hard to trust people these days. And as trust deteriorates, relationships deteriorate. And relationships are the building blocks of a good society. Good, loving relationships are the building blocks of a good society. And as I see, the violence on TV, the violence in other aspects of the media, the music, such trash in today's music. Add to that the violent crimes, the lies that we're being told by governments. And I do believe that we're being lied to. And I think we're going to find that out in heaven, that we're being very lied to. With all this stuff that's happening, it's getting harder and harder to trust people. And I'm convinced, guys, notice that this text says, because wickedness will abound, the love of many will wax cold. So guys, what this tells me is that there's a fight that we have to engage in, man. We have to enter the warfare, the fight to keep on loving one another, dude. This is not, this is greater than the fight, World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, the war on Iraq, the war on terrorism. It's the fight to love one another. Because as things worsen, if we can't trust each other, if we can't trust God, not just the fight to love one another, remember, Satan is attacking the 10 Commandments, the law of love, loving God, loving your neighbor. If we don't have love for God, there's no way we can love each other. And if we don't have love for each other, guys, we're just done, man. We're done. If we're, dude, I'm telling you right now, This thing is so concerning to me because I see it happening before my eyes that I know things have been bad for a while, man, but stuff is getting exponentially worse. I'm not trying to be fear-mongering. This is not a doom and gloom thing. It's just what the state of the world is. And I'm saying that just based on this prophecy that Jesus gives, okay? Jesus is the one who gives that prophecy because wickedness will abound, the love of many will wax cold. That's a prophecy for the end of the world. Jesus tells us this because he wants us to understand that there's a fight that we're going to have to engage in. Not a fight with guns and ammunition, not a fight of attacking each other. It's going to be the fight to preserve your relationships. The fight to love God and to love your neighbor. It's not a joke, people. We're living in some crazy times. Ephesians 6 verse 12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. We're not fighting against each other, guys. Feminists, I'm sorry to break it to you, but men are not the problem. Satan is the problem, who manipulates sinful men who put their lives in his hands. BLM, police are not the problem. They're just not. Sorry to break it to you. Satan is the problem. We're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against powers in high places, spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. You got atheists talking about the fact that Satan doesn't exist. Demons don't exist. All the while they're being puppeted by demons, puppeted by Satan to hate their brothers and sisters. White people are not the problem. I can tell you that I'm about to marry a white girl. White people are not the problem. They're great. Satan is the problem, guys. Let's not forget. Let's not forget. God's word tells us that all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That's the state of the world that we live in. After Adam and Eve did it, it passed down to the whole human race. All of us are born with defects. All of us are born with the ability to make each other angry, the ability to frustrate each other because of our sin issues, our problems that we all come with. It's funny, the movie X-Men talks about how everyone, there's this time period that X-Men is talking about in the future or whatever, where there will be mutants, people who have evolved to gain these superpowers and stuff. Somehow I believe that it's quite the opposite. I believe that we all are X-Men, but we all come with special powers of destruction, special things to make each other angry, special things to frustrate each other. And the sooner we can understand that, listen, we are all born sinful and we all need Jesus to help us to get rid of these sins and start just dealing with each other instead of demonizing each other and letting each other grow in God's grace. The sooner we realize this, man, it's the sooner we're going to be able to love each other, man. I had to get to this point when I realized that, you know what? People will disappoint you because that's what sin has done to our race. The sooner we we don't get mad at people when they have autism or cancer. We don't get mad at people when they have, various sicknesses. Are you mad at your friend who has COVID-19, who seems like he's going to die? Are you mad at him because he has that? No. Well, sin is the worst disease that has ever happened to this world, and everyone has it. And it's the reason why we're so crazy, why we do so many things that hurt each other. And the sooner we realize this and accept it, and accept that, look, we all have issues, we're all working through it, and God is going to fix each and every one of us individually if we let him. The sooner we realize this, man, the sooner we'll be able to love everyone. Guys, let us love one another. That's it. Ask any questions.